නවපෑ සබන් සහ ක්‍රීම් ජාත්‍යන්තර ළමා රෝග පිළිබඳ විශේෂඥයන් විසින් සායනිකව තහවුරු කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
Tonight, big expectations. Sources tell foreign media that Sri Lanka is expecting a staff-level IMF agreement by the end of this month. High hopes. Presidential Advisory Council member Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy commends central bank measures.
And I think things are beginning to turn. If you look at what is happening in the government securities market, they are stabilizing and are coming back slowly. For the first time in a long time, the one-year treasury bill is being fully subscribed.
On the rise. Fears high for tourism hopes as Minister reveals rock-bottom jet fuel stocks. Investment ideas. The Ports Authority reveals its plans to fast-track its Trincomalee industrial port.
We have more than 2,400 hectares in Port of Trincomalee, and Port of Trincomalee is a natural harbour, and we have a great potential to develop it as an industrial port.
All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Thursday, the 2nd of June, 2022.
Life boy shampoo chunky, rupiah 70.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome, bringing you news from across Sri Lanka and around the world tonight on First at 9, your English news service on AdaDerana 24. I'm Indivari Amwatha. Sources have told Reuters that Sri Lanka will be hoping for a $3 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund, a sum that is 4 times the country's quota. The Reuters report also quotes the sources as being optimistic of completing a staff-level agreement by the end of the month after technical talks in the coming days. If it goes through, this will be Sri Lanka's 17th IMF program.
Quoting unnamed sources, Reuters reports that Sri Lanka will be seeking to borrow $3 billion from the International Monetary Fund through its extended fund facility. The report also says that Sri Lankan officials will be looking forward to another round of technical talks early this month and will be targeting a staff-level agreement by the month's end. If agreed upon, this will be the 17th IMF program that Sri Lanka has entered into. However, the country will have to agree to implement major economic structural reforms that will aim to correct some deep-rooted weaknesses. The extended fund facility, which lasts 3 years, will give Sri Lanka a 4.5-year grace period for repayments to get underway. Sri Lanka's $3 billion agreement this time around represents almost 4 times the country's IMF quota. Last week, the IMF said that it was in talks with the Sri Lankan government for a comprehensive reform package, but didn't specify what type of program was being negotiated. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe plans to present an interim budget within weeks that will look to address some of the IMF's concerns. Already, the island has begun implementation of some crucial structural reforms to ensure that its revenue reaches some level of sustainability. Earlier this week, the government announced an overhaul of its taxation in order to boost revenue. This included the hiking of corporate tax and the raising of the value-added tax to 12% from 8% with immediate effect. Last week, the country's cabinet finally green-lighted financial and legal advisors to head talks with its international creditors as part of its debt restructuring process.
Now, Sri Lanka Ports Authority Chairman Dr. Prasantha Jayamana says that plans are afoot to call for expressions of interest from international investors for an industrial port project using 2,400 hectares of prime land at the port of Trincomalee. Dr. Jayamana added that an international symposium is to be organized to attract local and foreign investors soon.
The Sri Lanka Ports Authority is set to float international tenders for the development of the Trincomalee port as an industrial harbour. This was revealed at a press briefing on Tuesday, chaired by the chairman of the Ports Authority, Dr. Prasantha Jayamana. Dr. Jayamana explained that the SLPA will be calling for expressions of interest for the project soon, and it will be open to any entity interested in investing in part of the 2,400 hectares of unutilized land surrounding the port of Trincomalee. Speaking to AdaDerana English News today, Dr. Jayaman explained what the project hopes to achieve.
Sri Lanka Ports Authority is planning to develop Port of Trincomalee as an industrial port by calling for EOI. This process was started some time back, and with the instruction of new Ports and Shipping and Aviation Minister, recently we have fast-tracked the process, and very soon we'll be calling for a investor symposium followed by issuing of EOI process, and we invite local and international industrial investors to come and invest in Port of Trincomalee for industrial purposes. We have more than 2,400 hectares surrounded in Port of Trincomalee, and Port of Trincomalee, as most of you all know, it's a natural harbour, and we have a great potential to develop it as an industrial port. We invite all the prospective investors to come forward for this very important investment opportunity.
The Committee on Public Enterprises has instructed the State Pharmaceutical Corporation to take immediate action to resolve the country's drug shortage using unutilized Indian credit loan assistance and other credit facilities. When the SPC was summoned before the committee earlier this week, the committee pointed out that despite receiving $200 million in financial assistance under the Indian Credit Line facility by April 22nd, the ministry's drug subcommittee had only recommended a stock compile of medical supplies worth $55.5 million or just 28% of the grant.
Indian Credit Line එකෙන් ලැබෙන පාස්කම් ඇතන බඩු ටික අපිට කොච්චර කාල සීමාවක් තුළ මේ ජනතාවට ලැබෙයිද?
Indian Credit Line එකේ අපිට පේන විදිහට මිලියන 200 මිලියන 92යි නම් පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙන්නේ 150ක්වත් පාවිච්චි වෙලා නැහැ. ADB එකෙන් කොච්චර
බැංක් වලින් අපිට වෙන් කරලා තියෙනවා US ඩොලර් මිලියන 73ක්.
මිලියන 73ක්. ADB
එකෙන් 66ක්.
Indian Credit Line එකෙන් මිලියන 200ක්. දැන් මේ අපිට ප්ලෙජ් වෙලා තියෙන ඩොනේෂන් ටික රීඅරේන්ජ් කරොත් හරියට මේ වෙන මේ සැපයුම් කරුවන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න ඔළුවෙන් පැත්තකින් අයින් තියලා මං හිතන්නේ මේ අවුරුද්දේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳන්න පුළුවන්.
හැබැයි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා මාස මේ process එක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මාස 4ක් විතර තමයි පස්සේ තමයි අපිට බඩු එන්නේ මේ ADB එකේ බඩු ටිකයි World Bank බඩු ටිකයි මේ procurement process එක ඒ තරම් දිගයි මේ අපේ යන ඒ මාස දැන් මේක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මාස 11ක්වත් යනවා මේ ඔක්කොම මේ අපි
ඔබතුමාට බාධා කරනවා නෙමෙයි Indian Credit Line එකට තෝකමද
Indian Credit Line එක තමයි මේ වෙලාවේ දැන් Indian Credit Line එකේ අපි දේවල් ඔක්කොම ටික අපි බාර දෙනවා Treasury එකට බාර දුන්නාන් පස්සේ Treasury එකෙන් බාර දෙනවා ඒක මේ එම්බසි එකට එම්බසි එකෙන් ක්ලියර් කරලා තමයි ඒ රටට යවන්නේ
නෑ ડોක්ටර් දැන් අනිත් අමාත්‍යාංශ ටික ඕක කරානේ දැන් අපි දන්නවනේ දැන් තෙල් සම්බන්ධවත් ওই විදිහටම තමයි Treasury හරහා තමයි කරේ හැබැයි දැන් අපි ඒ නිසා අද මේ කෝප් එකේදී Treasury එකටත් අපි මේ දැනුම් දෙන්නම් මේක ඉක්මන් කරලා මේක කරන්න කියලා. එහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක් එන්නේ නෑ.
මේ සිස්ටම් එකේ ප්‍රශ්නේ නෙවෙයි data enter කිරීමේ ප්‍රශ්නේ. දැන් SPC එකේ තියෙන්නේ මේ SPC එකේ ඒ අවශ්‍ය වෙලාවෙදී මේක ඕඩර් කරා දැන් මේ මෙන්න මේ process එකේ තියෙන කියන එක ඒ data ඒ වෙලාවට අප්ඩේට් කරනවා නම් මේක ෂෙයා කරගන්න පුළුවන් MSC එකට.
ඒක සැලකිතු ප්‍රමාණයක ගැටලුවක් තියෙනවා සමහර ඒවා විතරයි එන්ටර් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපේ පැත්තෙන් SPC එක ගත්ත
ඇයි අනිත් ඒවා එන්ටර් කරන්න බැරි?
ඒ කියන්නේ ඒකේ තියෙන පහසුකම් පාවිච්චි කරන්න බෑ.
දැන් තියෙන සිස්ටම් එක කියන්නේ.
ඒ වෙනුවෙන් අපි ගත්ත ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය තමයි අපි සම්පූර්ණ අපේ මොනිටරින් ඩිවිෂන් එකක් වෙනම තියෙනවා. ඒ හැම ස්ටේජ් එකක්ම හැම ඩේට් එකක්ම ෆලෝ අප් කරනවා.
ඒක unacceptable.
Procurement
I will not sit here and accept this. No, sorry. million 500ක් වියදම් කරලා සිස්ටම් එකක් හැදුවයි කියලා ඔඩිටර් ජෙනරල් කිව්වානේ.
පරණ සිස්ටම් එක.
හරි දැන් ඒක කොයි කාලෙද හදලා තියෙන්නේ?
2008 විතර තමයි පටන් ගන්න තියෙන්නේ. 15 තමයි ඉම්ප්ලිමන්ට් වුනේ.
8 ඉඳන් 15 අවුරුදු 7ක් තිස්සේම හැදුවා.
මිලියන 644ක් මේනොට වියදම් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ඊට අමතරව මාසයකට 5 මිලියන් මේන්ටෙනන්ස් charges මේකට ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. ඒතකොට අවුරුද්දකට මිලියන 60ක් ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. ඒ නමුත් ඒක අවශ්‍ය අවශ්‍ය විදිහට නෑ.
මේක පුදුම වැඩන්නේ පොඩක්.
It's a crime.
It's a crime.
With some international airlines having taken measures to carry extra fuel when flying to Sri Lanka, hopes for some semblance of normalcy in the country's tourism industry are starting to fade. With fears of a rise in ticket costs to Sri Lanka a very real threat, Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara confirmed this today in his latest update on fuel stocks. In a tweet, posted today, the minister revealed that the country has only 364 metric tons of jet fuel until the next shipment arrives on the 11th of this month. In the meantime, Litro Gas Lanka Limited, which distributed 50,000 gas cylinders daily to the market since Tuesday, will reduce this number to only 16,000 cylinders tomorrow until another shipment arrives over the weekend.
This morning, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara tweeted updates to fuel stocks available with the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals. He revealed that Sri Lanka has 18,825 metric tons of auto diesel and 42 metric tons of super diesel at present. In addition, 33,498 metric tons of 92 octane and 13,067 metric tons of 95 octane petrol are currently in hand. The minister, however, assured that there will be adequate fuel for the next 3 weeks in the country, with the arrival of more petrol and diesel shipments in the second and third weeks of June. He also said that the second Indian credit line of $500 million is expected to be received in the second week of June, and it will cover the bulk of the June fuel bill, which amounts to $540 million. Meanwhile, with international airlines at present being warned to carry extra fuel on flights to the island, fears over Sri Lanka's ability to refuel international airlines can have serious consequences for the tourism industry, a hit that the country can hardly afford right now. The minister's tweet, however, didn't help allay any fears, revealing an alarming fact that only 386 metric tons of jet fuel remains in stock. To put it into context, a single A320 Airbus is said to consume 2.5 tons of jet fuel per hour, meaning at best that it should be enough to only ensure 154 flying hours. According to Minister Wijesekara, the next jet fuel shipment is expected to arrive on the 11th of June.
Another consignment of Jet A1 fuel, which is used by the aviation industry, which is amounting to 49 million USD, which will arrive, scheduled to arrive on the 11th of June, which we have to make the payments in the next couple of days.
Meanwhile, yesterday, Minister Wijesekara tweeted that the CPC and the Power and Energy Ministry have received more than 70 proposals last month for the supply of petroleum products. He explained that all proposals are to be evaluated by a committee comprising government officials, and letters of interest are to be issued once the requirements are fulfilled. However, despite most of the proposals fulfilling technical requirements, he explained that they had failed to fulfill the payment requirements expected by the CPC. In the meantime, operations at the Sapugaskanda oil refinery that were halted last Monday after a breakdown have recommenced from yesterday. The plant is expected to release about 1,000 metric tons of diesel daily. Further, on the gas situation, the state gas supplier Litro Gas Lanka Limited is expecting another 2,950 metric ton LPG shipment to arrive in Sri Lanka during the weekend. Until then, domestic cylinder distribution that began on Tuesday was carried out using gas from a shipment that arrived on Monday. An average of 50,000 cylinders were distributed daily from that shipment up to today. However, due to the limited number of gas stocks in hand, the company said that it will only distribute a total of 16,000 12.5, 5 and 2.3 kilogram cylinders tomorrow. Litro Gas has also updated its daily list of fully stocked up LP gas dealers on its website www.litrogas.com.
Now, during a meeting with representatives of the joint chambers today, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe stated that discussions with the IMF are proceeding and expressed optimism that negotiations will conclude by the end of the month. Meanwhile, the Premier also added that Sri Lanka's relations with Japan have been broken and will take a long time to get back to normal.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe met with representatives from the joint chambers today. During the meeting, he explained that the government is targeting $5 billion this year for repayments, plus a further $1 billion to bolster the country's reserves. He elaborated that discussions with the IMF are proceeding and that he was hopeful that negotiations would conclude by the end of the month. Prime Minister Wickremesinghe also explained to the representatives that debt restructuring has begun following the appointment of financial and legal advisors, adding that any bridging finance to help alleviate the crisis is dependent on an agreement with the IMF being reached. Commenting further, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe stated that talks are continuing with donor nations. He added that relations with Japan had broken down and it would take a while to repair those relations and regain their confidence. On the medicine shortage, the Prime Minister explained that former President of Maldives, Mohamed Nasheed, is leading the international appeal for urgently needed medicine supplies. Addressing the issue of food scarcity, the Prime Minister explained that securing fertilizer and compiling a food security program is being given equal priority, and explained that in the event of any excess crops, they would be provided to vulnerable groups at a concessionary rate.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Professor G.L. Pires has called on the diplomatic community in Colombo to extend their fullest assistance to Sri Lanka to overcome the island nation's current challenges. He made this plea during a meeting with Colombo-based envoys at the Foreign Ministry premises today, where he explained to them the seriousness of the issues the country is faced with, such as the lack of essential commodities in the country.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Professor G.L. Pires met with members of the diplomatic corps in Colombo at the ministry premises today. The meeting was also participated by Secretary of Foreign Affairs Aruni Vijayawardena, Governor of the Central Bank Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and Secretary to the Ministry of Finance Mahinda Siriwardena. During his address, Foreign Minister Professor Pires outlined the prevailing situation in Sri Lanka and the challenges encountered by the government, which include serious issues such as shortages of fuel, gas, essential pharmaceutical products, as well as power cuts. Professor Pires also detailed the measures taken by the government to address the situation in this regard, and he then called on the envoys to extend their fullest assistance at this time of Sri Lanka's need. Further, the minister has also explained about the 21st Amendment to the Constitution that is expected to be presented to the Parliament soon upon Cabinet approval. The Foreign Minister also requested the foreign envoys to extend their support and goodwill to help Sri Lanka to overcome this challenging phase.
And China sends a batch of medicines to Sri Lanka. Details after this break.
Big 3.
A total of 512,640 syringes of enoxaparin sodium injections, an urgently needed essential life-saving medicine, is expected to arrive from China this month in 2 consignments. The supplies have been arranged by the Chinese government as part of the first batch of its 500 billion renminbi grant to Sri Lanka to purchase essential goods. The first consignment is expected to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow.
Issuing a media communique, the Chinese embassy in Colombo says that the first batch of essential goods under the Chinese government's 500 million renminbi grant to Sri Lanka, that includes 512,640 syringes of life-saving enoxaparin sodium injections worth 10 million renminbi, will be delivered in 2 consignments. Enoxaparin sodium is a critically required anticoagulant medication commonly used to treat and prevent deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolisms. 1 consignment of 256,320 syringes is scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka at midnight tomorrow, with a total volume of 40 cubic meters and a weight of 4.3 metric tons. The release said that the second consignment of another 256,320 syringes is expected to arrive in the second half of the month. The Chinese embassy stated that the 2 consignments of syringes will be sufficient for Sri Lanka for 6 months. The embassy also said that it will continue to work closely with both Beijing and Colombo to follow through on the important agreement reached by the leaders of the 2 countries and provide much-needed livelihood assistance for Sri Lankan people as a top priority.
Now, GCE advanced level examinations, which were scheduled to be held in August this year, are expected to take place in the months of October and November. During a press conference, Minister Susil Premajayantha stated that the Grade 5 scholarship examination will also be postponed this year. This year, schools are expected to continue their academic activities until the 23rd of December in order to catch up for the time missing during school closure. The completion of syllabus for year 2022 is to be discussed among relevant education officials as well as the minister. Minister Susil Premajayantha further stated that estimates required by the Ministry of Education for textbooks, uniform, materials, printing paper and other equipment have also been established. Rolling power outages, which were suspended to accommodate the GCE ordinary level exams that began on the 23rd of May and ended yesterday, came back into operation from today. Accordingly, after the end of the exams, the Ceylon Electricity Board's request to reintroduce power cuts was recently approved by the Public Utilities Commission. However, the duration of the power outages have been limited to 2 hours today and tomorrow and will see a further reduction to just 1 hour on Saturday. There will be no power cuts on Sunday, the 5th of June. The reduction in the duration of power outages is a result of ongoing low demand for electricity as well as due to readily available hydropower generation. the Commission said. Go to Go Home protests at the Golfers Green continued today into a 55th consecutive day. However, there was some controversy yesterday after the accusation of sabotage levelled at the President's media division over a statement regarding a meeting between the President and the supposed representatives of the Golfers struggle. The protesters at the site meanwhile have rejected the talk, saying that they do not recognise the individuals who met with and handed over proposals to the head of state yesterday.
The protests at Golfers Green demanding the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa continues into its 55th day. During a press conference last evening, the protesters addressed the media regarding a statement issued by the President's media division that same day. In the statement, the President's media division stated that a group of protesters calling themselves the Confederation of Professionals for a National Policy visited the President with a set of proposals for the resolution of current issues. The proposals include a development program with specific targets that should be met by all ministers and calls for the removal of government officials who fail to meet them each year. However, at the media briefing, the protesters rubbished the report, saying that no one affiliated with the protest site had met with the President. They accused the PMD of issuing the statement in an attempt to sabotage the real movement. The protesters concluded that they will not accept responsibility for the actions of any individuals or members of the clergy with no connection to the struggle who meet with the President.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna Municipal Councillor Mahinda Kandagama was arrested this evening after surrendering to the CID. The Fort Magistrate named former Minister Johnston Fernando, Mahinda Kandagama and two others as suspects when the case pertaining to the brutal assaults made on peaceful protests on the 9th of May were taken up yesterday. The court yesterday also remanded 12 suspects, including parliamentarian Sanat Nishanta and Milan Jayatilaka until the 8th of June. Further, the Criminal Investigations Department have deployed 2 teams to Colombo and Kurunegala to arrest former Minister Johnston Fernando. Welcome back. The Department of Meteorology has issued an advisory for heavy rainfall above 100 millimeters that can be expected in the Western and Sabaragamu provinces as well as in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. Further, the National Building Research Organisation has extended early landslide warnings issued to several areas in 8 districts until 3 p.m. tomorrow.
Yesterday, the Department of Meteorology stated that heavy rainfall will continue until Saturday, the 4th of June. With that being the case, the department issued an advisory today stating that heavy falls above 100 millimeters can be expected in areas of the Western and Sabaragamu provinces, as well as in the Kandy and Nuwara districts. People living in hilly areas, particularly those who are in landslide-prone areas and low-lying areas in river basins, have been requested to be vigilant, while motorists and people using roads in the hilly areas are also requested to remain alert as well. Further, the general public is requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damage caused by lightning and to be alert for advisories issued by the Department of Meteorology. In the meantime, the Ginganga that spilled over following the heavy deluge in the southwestern areas of the country flooded both the Baddegama-Udagama main road and the Baddegama-Agalia road. Meanwhile, the Bulat Singhala Molkava Road and areas of Dambala, Atagas Handia and Paraguda were flooded today after a spill gate of the Kuklai Ganga reservoir was opened. A water capacity of 80 cubic meters per second is being released from the open spill gate. Meanwhile, despite warnings due to a rise in water levels, 2 persons in Kalutara drowned today while bathing in flood waters. In the meantime, by 6 p.m. today, the inclement weather had affected 18,346 people belonging to 4,187 families in 8 districts. Further, due to the expectation of more rains by the Department of Meteorology, the National Building Research Organisation has extended the early landslide warnings issued to several areas of Colombo, Gaul, Kalutara, Kandy, Kegol, Matara, Nuwara and the Ratnapura districts.
Taking you to business news, member of the Presidential Advisory Council on Economic Affairs, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy believes that the emergency measures implemented by the Central Bank's Monetary Board are beginning to bear fruit. Speaking at a webinar organized by the central bankers, or rather ex-central bankers today, Dr. Kumaraswamy stated that things seem to be getting better, citing higher demand for Sri Lanka Treasury bills. In the meantime, he also addressed medium and SME sector woes, saying that the central bank's measures have avoided a hyperinflation scenario that would have affected everyone.
Now, it is crucial that there is a primary surplus in the budget on a sustained basis. There have been only 4 years since 1954 when the country has had a primary surplus in the budget. Well, I think it may take us a couple of years. I think the primary deficit this year could be about 4.5% of GDP. So to get to surplus, it will take us a couple of years. But once we get to a primary surplus, we need to maintain a primary surplus in the budget. And that is what the government is, I hope, will get us there. On monetary policy, it's good that financial repression has ended. The interest rate cap has been removed. Crucial that there was a clear signal to intent on the part of the governor and the monetary board to indicate that firm action will be taken to contain inflation and, even more importantly, inflationary expectation. I think that signal had to be given, and as I said, the governor has to be commended for giving a very clear signal in that way. Now, I see a lot of people writing that this is having a terrible effect on MSMEs. It is. There is no doubt. It is having a terrible effect on MSMEs. But what is the counterfactual? The counterfactual is hyperinflation. And in the context of hyperinflation, not only MSMEs, but almost all businesses, almost all segments of the economy, devastating governor to give a very, very clear message in terms of his intent, in terms of containing inflation and inflation expectation, which is what he did. And I think things are beginning to turn. If you look at what is happening in the government securities market, there has been an overshoot in terms of the rates, but they are stabilizing and are coming back slowly. For the first time in a long time, the one-year Treasury bill is being fully subscribed. People are not just focusing on 3-month ones, and the auctions are also fully subscribed. So we can see stability returning, and over time, I hope we will see some reduction in the market's interest rates as well.
And after 7 days of closing in negative territory, the stock market entered into a green territory today. The all-share price index of the Colombo Bourse gained 0.43% to end at 8,990, or rather 8,099.51, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 2,671.72, following a 0.62% drop. Share volumes were 69 million, with market turnover at 1.4 billion rupees. The food, beverage and tobacco sector was the highest contributor to turnover, while the consumer services sector was the second highest. Foreign purchases amounted to 390 million rupees, while foreign sales were 204 million rupees. And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.